Welcome to Techstination. Joining us are Dr. Judith Buchheim, anesthesiologist at the University of Munich and principal investigator with what's called the Cimon program, Cimon, and Heather Fraser, global life sciences and healthcare lead at the IBM Institute of Business Value and also a pharmacist. Thank you for joining us, Heather and Judith.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you
for inviting us.
Well, we've got some interesting things to talk about. First off, I'll turn to you, Judith. Give us an idea of what Cimon is all about, spelled with a C.
Cimon is the abbreviation for the Crew Interactive Mobile Companion, and it's actually an AI, so artificial intelligence powered autonomous robot aboard the ISS. And we have designed Cimon to be a crew member, and not a human one, but a robotic one, to assist crew in their daily activities and also to reduce workload and to bring a little bit of fun to the daily routine. And our idea is to reduce stress and to work in the direction to prevent health in astronauts.
Well, the robot HAL comes to mind, and I'm sure you've heard that many times.
Yes.
But this is designed to help the astronauts who are aboard the International Space Station with loneliness issues and other issues. Tell me more.
Yeah, when you think of AI in space, then it's usually HAL that comes up. But of course, there are many other sci-fi movies and series, and you get the AI concept quite a lot. So you get also assistants, robots there, and not all of them are as bad as HAL turned out to be. Of course, we're not in this phase of the experiment where we have a robot that controls everything, like in Space Odyssey. It's different. We just begun with the project. So we had 2 sessions. We have a hardware that is up there that has been trained before with the German astronaut, now with the Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano in February. And what we do is we try to have something ready for these guys up there that are really, really under pressure every day, a full workload, and then to have like a tool that sort of can be different from your crewmates, but be also a partner. Because if you're up there, of course, at the moment, if you're on the ISS, you see Earth all the time. So actually you get the idea that you're quite close to home. Also, if crew wants to talk to family members or people on ground, it's quite easy because we're so close to Earth. Remember that we are only 300 to 400 kilometers above Earth, so it's not that far. Nevertheless, you get lonely because daily routine is something, or life up there is very specific. It's they are under stress every day, so there are things like sleep disturbances or life cycle disturbances. So you have the typical Zeitgeber, as we call it. So the rise of the sun in the morning and the sunset in the evening doesn't happen. It happens 18 times. So you don't get that. So you have a lot of background noise, workload, and of course, microgravity and radiation. Radiation, not so much, but still it affects you. And you need to do a lot of training every day to keep up to your personal health. So it's a lot of workload, a lot of things to do, and you're far away from your loved ones, though you can talk to them, but still it's not the same. And if we look into the future of spaceflight, if you look to missions that are going to happen to the moon, for example, we want to return to the moon, to spend more time there, to go back to the surface, and eventually travel to Mars, as you all know that we are all planning this. If you travel to Mars, it takes you 1 year or so, and if you want to talk to them, you have a lag time of 30 minutes. So that's not really a scenario where you can really talk to your loved ones. So coping with loneliness, with isolation, confinement, being confined with crew members that you know, but still being under pressure all the time, it's something different. So things that can happen is that you have group dynamics that are very strong. So if, for example, if you have a very charismatic, strong leader, crew members tend to follow the opinion of this one person because it's easier. It's what you tend to do in a group. this might not always be a perfect scenario. For example, if you encounter a problem and you have a technical problem, and maybe the technician knows more, has more insight, but is maybe a little bit afraid to say, okay, I have a different direction for tackling this problem. And we believe Cimon could come in there because he is not, and I'm purposely saying he because he's a person to me personally. It's a platform, it's an assistant, it's a companion that is not involved in all these things like hierarchy, or is not emotionally involved in all these group dynamics. So he's open to say, well, I think if you look at all these data, probably the direction to solving this problem is a different one. And it can help like weaker crew members to come up with their solution. On the other hand, for example, if we go back to that team leader, he just might encounter fear or even doubts on how the mission might go on. And if you want to talk to someone and you're the team leader, it can be sometimes very difficult to admit that you are afraid of something and you don't want to do that. Still, you have to cope with these problems because you need to get over your feelings and you need to focus on the mission. So we believe that especially for these kind of crew members, we might have a solution where this person could open up to a machine, a companion that is not part of the usual team, that could help to discuss these kinds of problems and also to find a way to open up to them. So there are multiple options for such a platform, and I think Cimon has the right approach.
Really, really interesting. And we're going to relate this to what so many of us are going through today with the COVID-19 in a minute. But first, let me turn to Heather. Tell us about some of the work that you're doing, I guess involved with helping people cope with this.
Yes, so in 2017, we brought out a study on loneliness and the aging population. And it was looking at the various areas that initiate the feelings of loneliness. So physical and the loss of physical and cognitive ability, not being able necessarily to be with family and friends, the loss maybe of the job that you did, your professional identity, and then also really looking at what the individual's value to society, their purpose in life, and how they're recognised in the media and the market. And when the COVID-19 pandemic came about, we looked at the issue of loneliness again for the older adult, for the older adult, for the aging population, but we recognise that it's a wider issue, and we looked at how we could, what learnings we could bring to update it in light of the new situation. And I think a couple of things, if we look at it from a technology perspective and building on Judith's example of using AI, we looked at how AI solutions, cognitive solutions can help to build new services for that individual, how they can make them very personal, and how they can integrate them. And so I think the one thing that I should say is that the difference between what we see with the older adults and their issues with loneliness and the astronauts up on the International Space Station is that those astronauts choose to be up on the space station. The people that we find down on Earth who are having issues with loneliness, it's been enforced on them. It's not of their own choosing. So there's a few things that are going on where we believe that the older adult can be, they can be helped, but also their families who are living outside of their house can also feel confident that they are okay. So one of these is some work that IBM have been doing with a care provider called Corentis 360. And they're looking at, or together we're looking at using the Internet of Things, cloud, and AI capabilities. And what we're doing is using non-invasive sensors in the individual's home to monitor activities that they're doing on a daily basis. So that may be Mrs. Smith, who gets up every morning at 6:30 and she turns on the kettle to make her cup of tea. And the monitor, the non-invasive monitor above the kettle, sees that the steam is rising, so they're okay. She's up, she's safe. If that monitor didn't if the sensor didn't monitor the steam at that time or about that time, then there would be an alert to the family or the carer that Mrs. Smith may not have got up, so somebody needs to contact them. Obviously more of an issue today when you can't go into the home, but to try and contact them to make sure they're safe. And I think the key thing is this word non-invasive sensors. I worked as a pharmacist in community pharmacy back in the 80s, and we were doing a lot with technology where you wore a big button around your neck, and you push the button if you needed help. The problem was that people didn't remember to put it on in the morning, or it got in their way, so they would put it down and it wasn't in the right place when they needed it. So this use of the non-invasive sensors that are put around the home, and another type of sensor that we're working with, LiDAR, which we're working with a company called Seracare on, will sense those daily activities, or in the case of LiDAR, if the individual falls below a certain level in their home, it will sense that they've fallen, basically. So this is the technology that is the AI technology that is helping with the keeping the elder population safe today.
Let's envision, if we can, and get comments from both of you, the possibility of having, I guess it would not be as non-invasive as what you're talking about, but having something like a Cimon, a robot, which is, I mean, the one that they're using on the space station is this spherical robot with a screen that, from what I've seen, has a smiley face. I'm sure it can show other things too. But having something like that as a companion and a monitor. I mean, there are companies that have been trying various devices like that I've seen. But what about something like that? Are we envisioning that for perhaps the near-term future to help with the elderly and perhaps others?
I think it is being used today already. When we did our initial study, we interviewed 50 organisations around the globe to find out the types of solutions that they were coming up. And one of the organisations that we worked with was making dolls with those sensors in them for more the patients that had got the dementia, the Alzheimer, but it was also so that the family could monitor their movements. We've had quite a long discussion about this, Judith and ourselves, about what these should look like. And I think we feel, we all feel that okay, it's fine to have a doll or to have a pet-like robot, but the concern is that about the activities that they're doing. So in the case of the dolls that I was talking about, that was very much to give comfort to the older adult that had some sort of dementia. If you start to take it to a level of they're there to help with the loneliness, we need really to think about what activities that they're doing, what data will this robot have, how will they collect answers, what will be shared, who can they share those answers with. And I think only by being very transparent with the older adult about that, will we get them using them in a similar way to the astronauts use them currently on the International Space Station. So it's that transparency about how that data is being used.
Judith, what are your thoughts?
Well, at the moment, of course, Cimon is a project that's really designed for the space environment, but the German Aerospace Center, when it designed or had the idea of this project and discussed all these options, because Airbus does the robotic part, IBM provides the AI, and what I'm doing is sort of the scientific part of it. So I come from a background where I did a lot of studies with astronauts aboard the ISS, so I know I'm fully aware of the problems of the sort of underreporting of problems, which I mentioned earlier. And this has to do with the nature of being able to perform all these difficult tasks, and they want to be considered also a little bit as heroes because they are very special people, and they're selected and for this very special environment. And still, they are human beings, and still researchers know how to measure stress without them telling us that they are stressed. This is all part of science, and you can measure it in hair samples, you can measure it in saliva samples, and you see that the body reacts to this very specific environment, even though they might not perceive it as stressful because they want to be there. Now, if you go back to the to the general public and to elderly people, but also people living alone, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the elderly. Also, younger people live at home, and especially in cities, and become more lonely. We know that.
Well, especially during the situation that we're in now.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
If it's quite funny if you go into an isolation phase. So let's call it isolation phase. It depends what you have there. So if you, for example, if you go to isolation with your family and your kids at home, you might complain of these stressors, these stress factors like noise, that you would like to have a silent room where you can work in private and be for yourself for one moment. But if you want alone and you're not allowed to meet friends, the stressor is silence, right? So it's a very personalized thing. So, but still, isolation does similar things to our body. So if you are stressed, in whatever the reason, whatever stressor is imposed to you, this has an effect on your immune system, on everything. Your ability to speak, to converse. I mean, right now we are in a modern world, so we are doing telecoms and video interviews and stuff like that. So we are using our voice. That's fine. But imagine if you don't have that, if you're working a different field and you work from home and you don't need to have conversations. That also accounts for elderly people. They don't use their voice, and voice is based on muscles and the larynx and the area where you formulate your voice tone. And this is really an issue in the elderly, that conversing with someone really trains your ability to speak, but also cognition. So also the ability to think. So there are many factors, and I could speak hours of this, but there are so many organ systems in your body that are affected, that affect your health. So I think for Cimon, it's very valid to think of a different hardware, a different design, and Heather has elaborated on that. We have to think about what should it look like. What kind of design makes people happy to converse with? Because if you have a robot that is very, very tall and very frightening, you wouldn't like to be living with that. It doesn't help, right? So, and if it's too cute and too tiny, you wouldn't listen to any advice. So, for example, if you have a robot that should advise you on when to take your medication, what to eat, what to drink, if it's too cute, you wouldn't listen. So, on the other hand, if it's frightening, you wouldn't like to interact with it.
And then
So
there are questions too about the mobility. For instance, if someone did not do what they were supposed to be doing, an elderly person at a specific time, would this robot have the ability to find the individual and
yeah,
be able to
exactly.
click on them?
Also, data privacy, that's what Heather already said, is a big issue. What happens with my data? That's one of the biggest, the first questions you get. So if I interact with an AI system, what happens with my data? Where is it stored? Who can read it? What happens with this? What happens if I tell this robot that I feel bad and I want to discuss my problems with it? Does it go to my healthcare provider? Does it go to my family members? Are they informed about this? So am I happy with this? And I guess not. So we have to be aware of these problems on the one hand, but also of the wishes that the user has. So that's why for the Cimon project, it's a very special situation, because we are currently still developing, but we are in such a close contact with the end user, the astronaut. So we really rely on their inputs and their feeling and their how the scenario was for them, what could be improved and could made better in the next version. So, and this is really the case for robots and AI systems. Usually they design something and then they bring it on the market. And I think especially if you bring a robot to your home, you should really have the elderly in mind, have them evaluate early on, very early in your stages of design and also functionality, what is good for them, what is trustworthy, because that's one of the big principles of AI, trustworthiness and also transparency, something that Heather already said. And really to make the design and the system work for them, not for the company that is producing them, but work for them. And then we need to discuss, of course, the levels of decision. So I would still like to see elderly people to be really self-determined, so they have the ability to decide for themselves. And this might even go as far as, for example, I don't want to have help if I'm feeling really sad at the moment. I just want to discuss it with you maybe, but I don't want to have someone come in for me. This is a way to decide for oneself. And it's not easy to answer these questions.
Really interesting. Well, we're going to be wrapping up in a second, but let me get your thoughts, Heather, on whether or not this technology is going to be in our homes helping, especially with the elderly within, say, the next few years, and the steps where we are today in terms of bringing this out. I know there's some examples out there, but to really go mainstream with this.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. There's lots of projects being run at the moment by companies. There's initiatives by the UK government, but a lot of it is still at the early stages, and it's going to take a time. I'm definitely seeing some of this technology, excuse me, it is in the time that we've been working on this project. So on over the last 3 years or so, we've seen things evolve with the technology, and I guess it's also thinking about whether you put it into people's homes, into care homes, retrofit it into people's homes, if you will, or whether you build it into new homes. So again, there's that thought as we move forward. Will every a new home for the I was going to say for the over 60s, but for the older adult, will it have the non-invasive sensors as part of the build? And there are towns. Projects in towns in the UK that I know of at the moment, where they are looking at how do we set up our towns so that it is ready for the population as it ages, that they won't have to move from their existing houses, but the infrastructure is there to support them, whether the family are there or not. So I think as we move forward, yes, we will see it become more mainstream. But as I say, I think it will be part of it will be the need to put it into new infrastructure rather than build it into existing homes.
Really, really interesting. Are there websites, I'll let you each take a turn, that people can go to learn a little bit more perhaps about what you're doing?
So for the loneliness project, if you go to ibm.com/thought leadership, you will find our loneliness in the older population study on there. And again, on ibm.com, if you search for Corentus 360, you will find details of the work that we're doing with the sensors with the care provider.
And let me spell that for people. It's KARANTIS 360. That's what you'd want to search for.
Yes, all one word, that is. Yeah.
And what about learning more about what's going on with Cimon? CIMON.
Cimon is quite easy. If you just put Cimon into Google, you'll end up with a lot of results. And of course, because Cimon is owned by DLR, you find some interesting articles about him on the DLR website. But also on YouTube, you can see videos from the interaction with Alexander Gerst, the German astronaut that was the first commissioning 2018. That's the Cimon 1 hardware. We now have a new hardware on board, and it's already been commissioned in February this year with the Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano. And you can also find already this very nice video online. So I think through a video, you can really see what we mean by it and what he does, and it's better than text.
And I guess Cimon's probably pretty popular on the ISS. Is there competition for Cimon's time?
Well, we not competition, but we get a lot of interest, and it's really nice to see. We're very happy about it. What we see during the sessions is that quite frequently crew members come in and watch the session. Actually, we didn't want it or didn't provision for it, but usually we want to have one human interacting with Cimon because of voice control. There's a lot of issues there. But during the last session, for example, Luca invited his crew members and really liked to show off a bit.
Does Cimon have a propulsion system? Because obviously in a weightless environment, this is a sphere that can float, but.
It's right. Yeah, there are 14 air vents, so you have like little air ventilators. So it's just by air, and he can orient himself. So he knows where he is. He only operates in Columbus module. That's the science lab of the ISS, and he has a map inside his brain, and he knows where he's located. So he can. He can perform absolute navigation. So you can command him to go somewhere, take a video or a photo, and come back and show it to you. So he's really autonomous.
Very cool stuff. Judith Buchheim and Heather Fraser, thank you for taking the time with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Now this. How many companies out there have continued to innovate when it comes to building a better radio? I'm Fred Fishkin, host of Techstination, and I'm here to tell you about the new CC Skywave SSB radio from the wonderful people at C. Crane. Bob and his crew really love radio, and it shows in this new compact model that is packed with features. Beyond great AM and FM reception and sound, you can tune into shortwave signals from around the world, listen to ham radio operators, aviation, and more. It's the radio you'll turn to every day, and in emergencies. It will run for nearly 3 days on just 2 AA batteries. Pair the sleep timer with the new Soft Speaker 3, and you've got the perfect radio for your nightstand. Of course, it can wake you up too. Click on Crane at Techstination.com and put in the code Techstination for a free flashlight with your order. They love radio, and you'll love C. Crane.